Well, hey, we are in a series right now studying the book of 1 Samuel. It's called Ordinary People, Extraordinary God. And last week, Pastor Joshua did a great job setting up this new narrative that has begun in the book of 1 Samuel. It starts off talking about sort of what's happening in the tabernacle and the birth of Samuel and what's going on there. But last week we saw the narrative changes, and there's this war that takes place between the Philistines and Israel. And Pastor Joshua did a great job explaining for us how the Israelites thought they could manipulate God by simply taking the ark of God into battle, thinking that that would guarantee them victory. But as we learned, God's looking at what's going on in our heart, not our traditions, not our rituals, not any other way we might be trying to twist his arm. He's looking at what's going on in our heart, and the Israelites' hearts were far from God, and so they suffer a defeat. Again, if you missed that message, go online, catch up. But now, the Philistines have the ark of God. And so we want to see what transpires now that the Philistines have the ark of God. So we're going to be picking it up in 1 Samuel chapter 5. Starting in verse 1, after the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then they carried the ark, in the ark of God, into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. Okay. So they take it into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. I did a little study on who Dagon is this past week and learned that there's some debate as to exactly what kind of god Dagon, was. Some say his name is related to fish, and so maybe he was the god of the sea. After all, Philistines lived along the sea, and so it could be the Mediterranean. But I would say more than that, argue that his name is closely related to the word for grain, and that he was probably thought to be the god of the harvest. And here's what you need to know, regardless, is that Dagon is the highest of the gods for the Philistines. In fact, it's kind of interesting that we have to even debate what his name means and who he was. Because he's thought to be the highest god. And yet, the meaning of his name is lost in iniquity. And I think it's because of what's about to transpire here. Okay, in fact, we're only going to hear about Dagon once more in the Bible. And check this out. We're going to hear about Baal, but Dagon was supposed to be the father of Baal. So again, he's the highest god of the Philistines, and who he even was is lost on us. And again, I think that's because what we're about to see transpire, and this is what's going on, whoever this Dagon is, the Philistines bring the ark of God into the temple, and really what they're doing is they're placing it before him as a way of saying, see, our God has conquered the God of the Israelites. Okay? Well, that's not going to go over too well. Look at verse 3. When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon, fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of Yahweh. They took Dagon and put him back in his place. Okay. Now, we notice there's a little change to the writing style here. Just wanted to point this out. As where the ark has been referred to as the ark of God, here it's the ark of Yahweh. And unfortunately, our translations don't translate this well for us. And I've taught you this before. Anytime you see the Lord, and Lord is all capitalized, L-O-R-D is all capitalized, in the Hebrew, it's not the Lord. The Lord is a title. But what the Hebrew is actually using here is the name of our God to distinguish our God from false gods like Dagon. Okay? And so what is really going on here is in this corner, you have Dagon, the god of fish or the god of grain, we don't know. And in this corner, you have Yahweh, the creator God, the God who's really above all other gods. And so what happens? Well, Dagon, this statue, we don't know how big this statue was. Maybe it was 10 feet tall. Maybe it was 20 feet tall. Again, he's their highest god. He has fallen over face down before the ark of Yahweh. And Pastor Joshua touched on this last week. Keep in mind what this would have looked like, because the lid of the ark of Yahweh is actually a throne. Sometimes it's referred to as the judgment seat or the mercy seat. It's the seat where God judges and shows mercy from. It's a throne. And what do you have here? You've got Dagon, their highest god, now fallen over, prostrate before God's throne. And to make it all the more embarrassing, did you catch that? When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon. So the Hebrew actually says the Ashdodites, all right? It's the citizens of Ashdod. They come to see how Dagon has conquered the God of the Israelites. And what do they find? Their God lying face down in front of the throne, the ark of Yahweh. Okay? Now, maybe this is the point where you start to think, that's interesting. That's never happened before. Could something be going on here? Well, we just read they put Dagon back in place, verses 4 and 5, but the following morning when they rose, there was Dagon again, fallen on his face, on the ground before the ark of Yahweh. His head and hands had been broken off and were lying on the threshold. Only his body remained. And that is why to this day neither the priest of Dagon nor any others who entered Dagon's temple at Ashdod step on the threshold. Okay. So he falls over again after they set him back up, and now his head and his hands have broken off. And clearly, this is trying to tell us something, okay? Back in those days, when you conquered an enemy, it was common to cut off their head. Okay? In fact, we're going to read later on, when we get the story of David and Goliath. What does David do after he conquers Goliath? He cuts off his head. Okay? They would also cut off the hand as a way to count the bodies. And now Dagon's head and hands cut off, and they're lying on the threshold, and there's debate on what the significance of the threshold is here. But here's what we do know, that in ancient times, they believed that was a sacred place, and that you did not want to desecrate or do anything disrespectful when you cross the threshold. The threshold, which is basically, it's the door frame, right? It's technically the floor, but it's what separates the common area from entering into sacred space. They even believed that this is where evil spirits and things of of that nature dwelled, trying to get into the sacred place. And so if you were disrespectful with the threshold, bad things could happen. One of my commentaries, again, this is all speculation, but speculated that maybe this is what the Philistines chalked it up to. Maybe they just thought somebody disrespected the threshold. Because they're going to start this tradition, right? Don't ever step on the threshold after this. Somebody disrespected the threshold, and that is what's happening to Dagon here. That's what's causing it. And it just got me thinking, isn't it amazing the lengths we will go to deny Yahweh and his power? The lengths that we will go to deny Yahweh and his power when we see it right in front of our eyes. Earlier this year, we experienced we didn't get to see it. We got only to see it partially here in Minnesota, but there was that perfect full solar eclipse. You guys remember that? Eclipses are absolutely amazing. It caused me to do some research on that when it happened. And here's what I learned. The sun is 400 times bigger than the moon. But the sun just happens to also be 400 times farther away from Earth than the moon. And so what happens is you get this perfect eclipse that takes place where the moon fits into the sun like a puzzle piece. There's over 100 other moons in our solar system. And check this out. Earth is the only planet where we get a perfect solar eclipse. Sounds like there might be a little intelligence behind that, yes? Isn't it amazing? There's still people who just absolutely deny the reality of a creator God. But friends, it's not just the atheists or those who deny such things. Right? We as believers, we do the same thing. We know God's trying to get our attention, and we somehow come up with an excuse to push it out of our minds, okay? Well, the people of Ashdod are going to begin to wake up a little bit because we read in verse 6, Yahweh's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod and its vicinity. He brought devastation on them and afflicted them with tumors. And when the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not stay here with us because his hand is heavy on us and on Dagon, our God. So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and asked them, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And of course, the rulers are going to say, we should acknowledge that Yahweh is the one true God and we should worship him, right? No, they answered, have the ark of God of Israel moved to Gath. So they moved the ark of the God of Israel. This is what the rulers concluded. These people in Ashdod are losing their minds. This is all just crazy coincidence. And they're letting, their minds run wild here. So let's take it from them and let's just move it to Gath. And obviously they're not taking this very seriously because one of the rulers who's sitting on that council would be from the city of Gath. Okay? But verse 9, after they had moved it, Yahweh's hand was against that city, throwing it into a great panic. He afflicted the people of the city, both young and old, with an outbreak of tumors. So this is where the Philistines finally realize, okay, Yahweh is the one true God. Let's get rid of our idols and worship him, right? Verse 10, so they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And as the ark of God was entering Ekron, now the people are beginning to wake up. The people of Ekron cried out, they have brought the ark of the God of Israel around to us to kill us and our people. So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and said, send the ark of the God of Israel away. Let it go back to its own place, or it will kill us and our people. For death had filled the city with panic. God's hand was very heavy on it. Those who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went up to heaven. Okay. Here's my question for us this morning. Is God trying to get your attention? Is there anything that might be going on in your life that might be God trying to get your attention? The reality is, friends, here's a principle, and it's ironclad. We hate it. We wish it wasn't true, but it just is. Idolatry leads to chaos. It just does. Every time. It always does. Idolatry leads to chaos in our lives. Now, please don't get me wrong here, okay? Jesus himself said, in this world, you're going to have troubles. We live in a fallen and a broken world. Chaos is a part of life. Okay? I have raised 3 kids, and my first 2 were twins, and I remember when they were just little things, right? And I remember the screaming. I remember the whining, okay? The temper tantrums. And that was me, all right? Just trying to raise them. I was like the 4th child for my wife, okay? And then they become teenagers. And many of us know there's days where I miss the whining, because at least they couldn't talk, right? No, there's going to be times where we experience, chaos in our lives, at work, in our families, in our marriages. That's just, that is part of life, okay? But sometimes the chaos that comes into our life, church, is related to how we're doing spiritually. In fact, I would argue that oftentimes the chaos that comes into our life is related to how we are doing spiritually. Now, please don't get me wrong. People get sick. We live in a fallen world, and because of sin, one of the consequences of that is death, right? We experience financial challenges. We experience challenges in our family and how to raise our kids best. That is a part of life, but I don't know about you. I do not need any unnecessary chaos coming into my life. Anybody else? I don't need any unnecessary hardships coming into my life. I've got enough troubles just trying to navigate this world and to navigate my family through this world. But idolatry always leads to added, unnecessary chaos in our lives. And I just can't help but wonder, is God maybe trying to get anyone's attention this morning? And maybe we've set something up on the throne of our heart that's leading to this unnecessary chaos in our life. For many people, it's money and wealth and chasing such things. Making life all about that, materialism, consumerism. For some of us, it's just hedonistic pleasures of some kind, whether it's abusing drugs, alcohol, whether it's pornography. Some of us, we do it in relationships, chasing after a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a future spouse. Friends, we can even make good things like our children into idols. And we start thinking that they're going to be the ones who are our ultimate hope and source of joy in this world. I'm telling you, you are putting... You're putting your hope in a fallible thing, and not only that, you're putting a heavy responsibility on your kid. They weren't meant for that. None of these things were meant for that. Yahweh is the one who is to sit on the throne in our heart, and that we are to find our ultimate hope in. Okay? And here's what's great about Yahweh. Here is what is so great about Yahweh. Oftentimes when we read Genesis 1, we get stuck on creation and sort of the order of events and things like that. One of the lessons we often miss when we read the creation account, what it is primarily trying to teach us about our Creator God, the God who is outside of creation, is that this God, the Most High God, what does he do? He takes the chaos and begins to bring order into it. That's what it's trying to teach us. He takes the chaos and begins to bring order in his timing. So, right, we read in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, void. And darkness was over the surface of the deep. It's a picture of chaos. And what does God begin to do? He begins to bring order. First, let there be light, and there is light. Right? Then he creates the sky, separating the waters. He creates land. Then on day 4, the sun and the moon with perfect eclipses. And then birds and fish of the sea. And then animals of land, and his crowning achievement, human beings. And we see how God brings this perfect order out of the chaos. And let me ask you this question, church, and I expect you to get the answer right on this. What's the means he uses to bring this order about? He uses his word. Let there be light, and there was light. He uses his voice. He uses his word. We just talked about this a couple weeks ago. We said where the word of the Lord is, the Lord is. His word is what brings order to our life when we submit, surrender to it, to him and what he says. And so, friends, I'm just going to ask you the Dr. Phil question here, okay? How are we doing right now? Are we sensing a little disorder that might be connected to a spiritual problem in our life? Some of us, our minds are out of order. And we need order restored to our minds. And maybe it has to do with things you're watching, things you're listening to, things you're putting in your mind. Some of us, it is our emotions. Our emotions are running wild. And we need order. We need order restored. We're dealing with feelings of hate, anger, fear. And listen to me. For some of us, our families are out of order. And we need order restored. You can sense it. And parents, I'm here to challenge you. You are a covering for your children. Young, old, doesn't matter. You are a covering. Dads, you're a covering. Our families need order. They need us living according to this book. And every single one of us can be a spiritual leader. Every single one of us. I'm proof of it. You can be a spiritual leader. You can. You can. You can pray. You can learn. You can grow. God gives us all the grace we need to do that. But you are a covering. Your kids need you. You might be doing just fine with your idol. I'm telling you, your kids aren't. You are a covering. God designed it so. We need his word. And when we give into this book and we start doing our best to walk according to this book, guess what happens? Order. Order in the chaos. Do I need to remind us the world is falling apart? Edinburgh Church will not. Because I'm going to challenge you to step up. Let your idols fall. And put Yahweh back where he belongs. On the throne in your heart. And you do that and you watch how so much unnecessary chaos begins to leave your life. And order begins to flow into your life, into your family. It will happen. It is a promise from Yahweh. Are we going to declare it, church? And what we got to do is we got to put him back where he belongs. We got to say, as for me and my family, what? We will serve Yahweh. Let's go, church. It's fall kickoff, and this is an opportunity. Hey. Jesus knows. Jesus knows we struggle with the temptations and the idols of this world. That's why he came. That's why he died for us. And he's not just the God of second chances. He's not just the God of third chances. He's not just the God of 10th chances. He is the God of 100 chances. He is the God of 1,000 chances. And you're here at church this morning, and this is an opportunity for every single one of us to say, all right, God, I need another chance. I need to get rid of the idols. And I want to put you back where you belong. And we're all going to walk out of here today with Yahweh sitting on the throne of our heart. Yes? Let's go. Lord Jesus, we thank you for your grace. We need it. Thank you that you forgive us and you love us and you sympathize with us in our struggles and our temptations. But you also teach us to pray. Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil. And Lord, that's my prayer for you, is that you would deliver us from the evil of this world and from the disorder that comes from a fallen world. Now, God, I pray that you would help us by your grace to see you and experience you and know that you are better. You never fail us. So help us to put you back where you belong. And I pray this week, Lord, as we walk out of here, we're going to see you restoring order to us and our families. So do the work only you can do, Jesus. We pray this in your name, and all God's people said.